realwatersports.com for any and all of your water sport needs.
Yeah, you know what? Real water sports. Every time you go on a trip, anytime you need a gift, anytime you need a brand new surfboard, realwatersports.com. Boom, boom, boom. Everything at your fingertips.
We haven't really talked about it since last year, but last year they made an investment in their helmet inventory, seeing kind of what was happening at Pipe. And I think actually the Kai Lenny incident where Kai Lenny cracked his helmet in half might have been during the backdoor shootout. So they realized, that's something that they should have on hand. And so it's a variety of different types, not only the hard plastic type, but also the softer style. So for surfing or for foiling, especially, helmets are should be considered. They've got the best inventory that I know of on realwatersports.com.
Yeah, protect your noggin.
Yeah, it's becoming in vogue actually to protect your noggin. And then, of course, colbyplus.com. It is the coldest time of year in Southern California. Why not go get a brand new Yamamoto 4.3 from Colby Plus?
You know, I was looking on the Oceanside buoy this morning, excuse me, this morning, as I do every morning. And I saw that the water temperature was 56 degrees. Now, look, here in San Diego, we're used to 60-degree water temperature, maybe, and it gets to be 58 too these days, which is borderline because, as you know, you shouldn't surf in water that's colder than your age, right? So 58's right there. Like, and now that it's 56, I need a 4.3. I need a hooded 4.3. It's chilly. David, I think this sounds like an old man, but it feels colder than it's ever been.
Um, I should know your age, but I don't. Are you allowed to go surfing today?
No,
You're not.
not allowed. I'm
Bummer.
not allowed. I know I need
You
to get a
aged
waiver
out.
from like the cold water gods, some sort of waiver.
You aged out of Southern California
But
in
I
January.
but I have been surfing. Like I surfed yesterday and within 30 minutes my right
Yeah.
foot was just white. Like I can't feel my surfboard and I can't wear booties. And I may have aged out. I'm not saying. I'm not going to
Yeah,
really
yeah.
reveal that.
Well, good news. I still have an Icelandic trip in me if I wanted to, in terms of my age, but not for much longer. So, but I've got the 4.3 from Colby. It's $300 and it's Yamamoto rubber and it's shipped to your door for free. It's incredible.
It's just such a good wetsuit. And I mean, David and I can't say enough about if you like comfort, if you like flexibility, performance, if you like, of course, the most important thing, super warm,
Yeah.
if you like a wonderfully snug fit, Colby Plus,
Yep.
it's the suit. And what a value.
It's it. Go check them out. colbyplus.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing.
Yeah, guy. Yeah, guy, David. Oh my, it's a chilly Thursday, January 23rd. We've had such clear skies lately, of course, sadly, with the fires. It means cold, cold morning air temperatures. And frankly, it's been cold throughout the day. Although yesterday it did warm up just a touch. Um, Welcome to Spit, David. It's the Spit Podcast. Scott Bass, David Lee Scales, talking all things surf with you. Good morning to you. First, let me say, wow, Tuesday night. Tell me about Tuesday night at the Belly Up with your co-host Chaz Smith, and you had Rusty and JoJo and Taylor Knox, and it looked like a San Diego um, luminaries were out in force for your event.
Yeah, it was a success in short. I'm still coming down, to be honest.
Coming down, quite a high if you're coming down.
Well, you know what happens? If you're
By
out
the way,
late,
there's a great Rolling Stone song. Do you know this song?
I don't know.
Coming Down Again. It's on Goat's Head Soup. It's about a guy coming down from heroin. It's actually not
Uh,
a great song. It's kind of a downer song, but you just said I'm coming down. I'm like, oh, coming down again.
the previous song where he was going up is phenomenal. The come down ain't so
Start
high.
me up. Start me up.
Exactly. Um, well, so if you go out late at night, especially as an older gentleman,
Depends what you mean by like how late is late.
well, I'm just saying it takes
Yeah.
a while to calm down, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're at like a high energy thing,
Yeah.
And so we got done at 10, maybe 10:30.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, shoot, my body isn't going to wind down until midnight, maybe later. So finally I was able to go to sleep around maybe 12:30. But also in that time, I really wasn't thinking about the event because as soon as the event was done, I'm like, I need to like not try to process if that was a success or not. I just need to like schmooze with some people, calm down, try to forget about everything, try to just focus on chilling so I can go to sleep. I did that fairly successfully, fell asleep at 12:30, but then my mind kicked into gear at the earliest morning hours. So like by 5:30 in the morning, I'm up really sharp and like, okay, how did last night go? What was wrong? What do we do? Did we get the recordings? Was all the technical stuff right? And then I'm like, so I slept for like less than 5 hours probably. So yesterday was a little bit lethargic and coming down this morning, I'm starting to feel a little bit better, is my point.
Yeah.
But the event was a success, and I don't know if I mentioned the origin of it to you, but a tour manager reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey, I'm a fan of the grit. You guys should take this on the road, basically." And I'm like, "Dude, there's no
Which,
way."
when you say tour manager, you mean Rusty's tour manager?
No,
Or you-
he books music acts.
Oh, Chris Goldsmith?
No, no, no. His name's Matt Washburn. He's from Charleston.
Oh, okay. And
So
who
his
is he the
co
tour manager? When you say tour manager, I'm confused.
well, he's going to tour manage us, but he books for a
Oh,
living. He books
okay.
bands.
Okay. So he is okay, I got you.
Yeah, he just books bands. He works for a touring company that books venues around the world for bands. And so the company I think is based maybe in Boston, but he's out of Charleston. So
Right.
he hits me up and he goes, "Hey, I work for this company. This is what we do. Work with venues around the world, but we're starting to book podcasters. There's a couple of podcasters who are big enough that they're going on tour." And he's like, "It's really successful.
Yeah.
And you should consider doing it. I'm a fan of the show. Like I've got these killer venues in beach towns that I know you could sell out.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, let's do one first. So that was the belly up. But the problem is it was a Tuesday night in January. So like no bands want the spot, which is why they offered it to us. The other
Yeah.
thing is you generally book stuff 6 months in advance. We did 6 weeks. But I
Right.
was like, look, we were not going to sell it out, but we can definitely, sell enough tickets to make it worthwhile for the belly up.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to say that the people came out and supported it. I think we had about 200 people in the room.
That's great.
So, which is a great turnout for a Tuesday in
Yeah.
January. Like I said, the Belly Up knows the numbers of what they normally do on a Tuesday night, and they were like, "This is fantastic. Like this is a success in our books." But
And
anyways, about the
were people buying drinks?
yeah,
Oh, good. That's
yeah,
kind of the
that
key.
100%. Yeah, they're not
Yeah.
going to make a living off $25
Yeah.
tickets.
Right.
So, but I realized, and I think I mentioned this to you last week, I realized this can't be about me like trying to entertain people, but let's bring somebody. I mean, Rusty has a storied history, obviously, like decades and decades, but also world titles won on his surfboards, big wave world titles won on his surfboards. So there's just such a depth of stuff to pull from stories, but also the visuals that accompany it. So we built a slideshow, put that big up on the projector, and basically just teed up the boys like, here's this wave, tell us about it. Taylor, here's this battle that went down, tell us about it. And then Rusty would fill in the gaps. And we had trivia questions for about Rusty. So we peppered those throughout the evening, like every 15 minutes or so, turn to the crowd and hit him with a
Do
trivia
you
question.
remember one of those? Do you have one
Hell,
for me?
hell yeah. You don't think I
Give
was
me
going to turn this on you to pay you back for all
yeah,
of the.
let me do my best here.
Okay. Riding a rusty surfboard, what Australian goofy footer won the world title?
On a Rusty?
That was not the question.
Aqua.
Actually, yes, that is the question.
Oh, so it's on a
Right.
Rusty.
It is the riding a rusty surfboard. Which Australian goofy footer was the first to win a world title?
That's a really tough question, man. I mean, without like having a bunch of dead air here on the podcast, I mean, just kind of
I can cut it out.
well, oh, good. Okay. So I'm gonna think, um, I'm thinking Goofyfoot's that won the world title. I think it's a trick question. I think it might be a female, but is it Frida Zamba?
It is not, and it is a male.
Is it Damien Hardman? No, it couldn't be Damien Hardman.
It is not.
A goofy. It's not Aki.
It's not Aki.
Yeah, Aki didn't win on a Rusty. A Goofyfoot world title. Was it Tom Carroll?
It was Tom Carroll.
Wow, that's interesting.
The very first Goofy footer to win a world title. So the follow-up question is, what year would that have been?
What number world title was it? Let me ask you a question. I'm going to say it was like 89.
It was 84.
Okay.
So he won his first world title in 1983, which made him the first Goofyfoot world title champ. And then he was riding a Rusty in 84, and he beat Sean Thompson for the title. Aki, of course, saw that. And so then Aki reached out and began riding Rusties to great fame. And that was really, Rusty pinpoints that as the moment that blew him up. He's like, I'd made boards for Rabbit, I'd made boards for Sean, I'd made boards for Tommy, won a world title. That was big. But once Aki was such a dynamo that really just shifted everything. And him doing it on a Rusty, everybody on tour was like, I need that. And everybody,
Aki was so interesting, right? The early 80s Aki, when he appeared on Surfing Mag, like he had this, he was kind of like, he just embodied everything of that time. Like there was like a rambunctiousness, and there was this real, let's drink wine on the beach in France between heats and like there was this real kind of creative nexus right there. And yeah, that's a great Aki and Rusty. That's fascinating. What, you got another question for me?
Yeah, the others I think are going to be a little easier for you. I knew that one would stump the crowd at least because people would just shout out Aki. They hear Rusty, Goofy Footer, Australian, they think Aki. So that almost intentionally led them down the wrong path.
Yeah.
But question number 2. When Carroll won those titles, there was another Rusty team rider who's only 17 years old. They dropped out of high school in the 10th grade to surf full-time on the world tour. In their rookie year, they were ranked number 16th. Who are they?
There's more than one?
No.
Who is he? You mean?
Who is he?
Oh, he is. So it's a he. I got you to tell me it's a he. I'm thinking it's David Eggers.
That's what the crowd thought too. It is Aki.
Oh God. You're stumping me. Well,
So the answer is Mark Akalupo, but the follow-up question to actually win the NVS Fins, Scott Bass,
yes.
how do you spell Akalupo?
I'm gonna say, look at these cool Shane Horan NVS fins. I'm gonna say OCC IHULOPO.
No.
LUPO. Here's how you spell it. OCCY.
Exactly. That's why people came up with a shorthand. You got all the letters right. They were in the wrong order. OCCHILUPO.
That's because I have OCC.
Achalupo.
Well, I have a who said that for you. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready for it.
Who said that, David? And I quote, I didn't talk to my parents or my brother for a year, partly because of that article and partly other things, mainly having to do with drugs. They thought I was doing heroin and cocaine, or they weren't sure exactly what I was doing exactly, but they thought I was a drug addict. It took them a long time to realize that I'm not a drug addict, that I'm a healthy person. Who said that? Was it A, Andy Irons, B, Bunker Spreckles, C, Shane Horan, or D, Tom Carroll?
Really tough. Shane Horan.
Yes, correct, David. I think that's like 1 out of 10.
It is, yeah.
I'm not keeping track. I thought you might get that because you recently interviewed Shane for Surf Splendor, and I don't know. This is from a 1990 article.
Well, the detail, I'm not a drug addict, I'm a healthy person.
Yes, that was a good poll, right? So that gives you a hint. As you know, the key to these things is to put one little gem in there that gives you enough so that it's not just an opaque, sort of ambiguous quote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but I gave you a hint. I gave you a hint because I've got the NVS.
That's true.
Shane
Shane's coming back to town in a month or two. Just FYI, for anybody who needs a board or wants a
Oh, well,
board
I
rather.
bring that up because, David, the California Gold Surf Auction
Oh,
is coming up here in April, in the spring, April 5 through April 19. And we have 48 vintage collectible surfboards on the auction block. And one of them is a McCoy, a Shane Horan model McCoy from, 1981, a single fin sort of laser zap with the, you know, red, pretty vibrant color, as was the case back then. So there's a really cool Shane Horan model in this auction.
epic.
Yeah.
Final thought on the Rusty evening. We're going to be going on tour, as you know, that was the tour manager's ambition. We just wanted to get through one proof of concept, and I think we nailed it.
Have you ever heard of? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
I was just going to say, I feel fortunate. Like I grew up really, really loving surfing and having kind of these people that I idolized. And I feel fortunate that I now get to interact with those people weekly, you know? And this is an opportunity to make that available for all of our fans. Like just hanging out, because it really wasn't, it was very conversational and it was very much a community thing. Like Rusty and all the guys are hanging out in the crowd. And also in the crowd are all these other pro surfers and shapers and San Diego legends. Like that's what the crowd was made up with. But then there was young kids, not young kids, but 20 somethings that were there too, all the way up to 60 somethings, and it was everybody's totally accessible and just hanging out. And so that's where I felt like I feel very privileged to have this position that I have, because I get to hang out and ask questions of these super cool people that I've idolized. But it's now made available to the community, not just through the internet, but in real life through these events. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, super cool. Um, and I was thinking about Charleston. I have a cousin that lives in Charleston, and he's in a band. And I was thinking about your friend, the tour manager. I'm like, I wonder if he manages him. But
Yeah, interesting. Well, we're
it's
coming to Charleston for sure once
it's
we get.
weird. Like you guys must be having interesting discussions about how you tell me about the process of selecting somebody, because you kind of nailed it. Like if you get a legendary shaper figure and then two guys around him that can help engage and provide a different viewpoint of the story that's being told via the slide. Um, so I obviously as somebody who produces events, I get thinking like, oh, that guy with those two guys, and so you got East Coast look.
Well, the East Coast is pretty cool because they don't have events like this. And like a lot of the West Coast surf world doesn't shine any light on that. So if you go
Totally.
out there, I mean, you can pack out, Jacksonville Beach, you could pack out Charleston, Wilmington, Asbury Park. Like there's a lot of surf community there that rallies around events like this. So
Yeah.
we're still mapping out who's who, but
That's going to be fun. That's going to be fun. Kind of like picking the right guy for the right thing. So yeah.
yeah, I'm excited. And the other thing is we're generating content out of it. So if you live there, great, come watch it live. But if you don't, we're going to publish it. Like I'm going to publish the Rusty Chat as a podcast today, and then the video version is going to go out next week.
Cool. I think you're on some. You're obviously onto something great.
What were you going
Um,
to say though? You said, have you ever?
I forget.
Mm.
Have you ever? I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, let's get into sort of the lead that we've already buried here, which is the pipe event is coming up here shortly in about 4 days. John Florence is out of the WSL season. He is not surfing. Oh my,
Huge,
discuss.
huge,
No John,
huge,
no Gabe. Is
huge
your
news. So,
viewership, is your interest in the tour lessened?
I thought about that. That's a logical question. My interest in surfing is higher than it's ever been before, but my interest in the tour is probably about the same. Um, John was definitely a draw. I guess what it comes down to is I would absolutely watch John's heat. So when the pipe event starts, if the waves are less than pumping, I basically don't watch the event throughout the entire day. unless it's somebody surfing who I really like. So on that day, they'll definitely get 30 minutes of my time with John. They'll get 30 minutes of my time with Gabe, 30 minutes of my time with Kelly. And now they're basically getting one less 30-minute chunk, is what it comes down to, unless the waves are absolutely pumping. But the flip side of that is I'm more excited to see John this year than I was to see him last year. I'm more excited to see him off tour.
I know somebody dropped a clip of him at that sandbar that was just mental. That Aokai sandbar that forms between swells, and oh man, it's going to be exciting. But you're right. At the end of the day, like I look at it like, what does the WSL World Championship title look like if the two greatest competitors in the world, and I don't think it's a stretch in it
No.
by any means to say that Gabe and John are the two greatest competitive surfers right now. I don't think that's an I don't think you can get an argument from anyone. I'm not saying there aren't other great ones, but if you had to pick one and two,
Yeah,
wouldn't they be one and two? I
totally.
mean, I know Griff's right there. I know Idolo's
No,
right there. I know that,
they're not.
I agree, but I'm just,
Yeah.
that's the argument you're going to get.
They're
To
the
me,
next
it's
step down.
Gabe and John are one and two, 1A, 1B.
So what's really a shame for you and I is that those guys haven't really butted heads, locked horns in the way that they could have over the course of the last decade. Because when Gabe was winning his, John was out with injury. When John's been winning his, Gabe took a year off. Now Gabe's out with injury. So it's unfortunate. This could have been the greatest rivalry. This could have been the greatest thing for the WSL ever. And it just two ships passed in the night, unfortunately.
What needs to happen is a John and Gabe 2 out of 3 event.
Yeah.
And maybe it's 2 out of 3 events, plural.
Yeah.
You do one event, and one, like at pumping one day, pumping cloud break, Kandui left, whatever it is. I mean, you and I, we're at a loss for why no companies, Red Bull, have picked this up and run with this. Like this seems like a no-brainer, but maybe I'm missing something.
John said in his statement, I've decided to focus on surfing in a different way this year. I want to create the time to explore, find new waves, draw different lines. I intend to compete full on for another year world title in 2026. But right now, the idea of adventure and creatively pushing my surfing as far as I possibly can is really exciting. The ocean is so big and there are so many different types of waves to explore. I'm stoked to be filming into some new projects and planning to share some amazing places we get to go along the way, end quote. So I think John nails it. I'm apprehensive to reiterate what we talk about over and over on the show, but the best surfers in the world are spending the peak years of their life on tour. And a lot of, even if they were the best locations in the world, which they aren't, there's a lot of downtime at those locations. So it's just not the best use of your time if your goal is to get the best waves and improve your surfing. And so I think John, look, 3 world titles, you have nothing more to prove. You've competed in the Olympics, you've won the Eddie. Now, and really, ultimately, I think he's taking a page out of his brother's book. If you look at Nathan Florence's last 2 years of surfing, Nathan has ascended to a spot that where his profile is as big as John's, nearly or arguably. And John's like, man, why don't I just follow that model? Getting barreled around the world is really what I want to do. And so that's what John stated that he was going to be doing. Interestingly, Gabriel Medina chimed in on the comments section because Gabriel's out with injury and he already withdrew from the season. So he said, hey, John, when I'm healed up, I'll join you. I'll meet up for a surf trip with you.
Okay, a couple things. You said John has nothing left to prove. For the sake of this podcast, I'm going to play devil's advocate.
I knew you would.
Based on what you've already mentioned, which is these two competitors, Gabe and John, have never really locked horns. A few seasons, perhaps, but they were never at the top of their game. Either John was injured halfway through the season or Gabe was out at a disco that year or whatever. But I think John and Gabe do have something to prove, and I've already mentioned it. They need to prove to the surfing world who of those two is the champion. And I've mentioned how to do that based on 2 out of 3 events over the course of a year. And I'm going to throw it out there.
Well,
We need to see you two.
Here's what I love about this. And maybe we're planting the idea in the ether, and this will trickle down to those boys. They realize the foibles of the contest format and the WSL itself. And they go on these surf trips together a couple times this year, and they produce some video clips. And then you and I watch those video clips when I'm like, man, John was killing it. And you're like, no, Gabe's wave was insane. And I'm like, they realize, oh, we can just do this ourselves. Let's pick 3 spots in 2026. Let's have 1 day of filming, and we'll just do battle for 8 hours. And the winner, let the last man standing win.
Do you think if Gabe joins up with John, let's say in August somewhere, he's all healed up, they're healed up. If Gabe presented this opportunity to John the way I've just broken it up, like, hey, John, let's have a 2 out of 3 to see who's really the best competitive surfer, or to see who's the campeon. Do you think John would go, hey, that's a good idea, let's do it?
Absolutely.
And vice versa. Do you think that, like, that's the conversation that needs to be somehow filmed or secretly tape recorded, where one presents the idea to the other and it gets tossed about in the South?
My answer is absolutely. They're both competitive enough to where they would totally do that. And obviously, there isn't a world title attached to it. It's bragging rights, and everybody's lured in by bragging rights, you know? Like if there was a world title on the line, there might be some like, this is a totally different format. It's not the same as the other world titles we won, but this is just bragging rights, internet rights, like Cloudbreak, Pipe. Well, they probably can't do Pipe, but
And it would be Can Dewey left to be somewhere in
yeah,
Indo, right? Like maybe
yeah, yeah.
HTs and Can Dewey
Yeah,
left or something.
phenomenal, phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
we would eat this up, and John's got his brand that would benefit from it.
Oh yeah.
So it's it's already it's so
Yeah,
obvious.
that's the thing. It's scary obvious. So
Let's do it. But my other question is, John said, I plan or I intend to compete full on for another world title in 2026. Will he or won't he, Scott?
he will. He'll be 33 years old. He'll be at his prime. I was going to ask you, what age do you think right now in this time that we're at is the prime time for a surfer? And I would suggest to you that 33 to 36 is peak
Really?
performance. Yeah, I do. And I base that on, I was going to say my own experience. I just feel like I surfed my best when I was in my mid 30s.
I think injuries start happening. I think there's a desire to maybe settle down and get married at that age. Like you just start to diffuse your interest into other things. I think late 20s, maybe 30 is the peak.
I guess it just depends, right? Like when you got these two guys that have sort of missed opportunities for injury, for other reasons, they've missed opportunities on tour. I think when you're 35, you also get that vibe like, hey, this thing's ending. I need to capitalize right now. Like you're as motivated, the way that you handle your body, the way that you maintain your health, your psychology is much clearer. You've probably have a wife and kids, and so I guess each case is different, but I feel like 33 to 36 is prime. I mean, you look at like professional tennis players. Djokovic, he's like 38. He's smoking dudes.
It's a different sport. I mean, we could just run the stats. What's the average age of world title winners? And I bet it's lower than 33 by a
I'm not
significant
doubting
margin.
that. I don't think that's, I don't know if that stats tells the whole story, but I'm not doubting that you're at your peak at 28 as far as maybe physical, but I'm also saying, look, in this day and age, if you take care of your body right, 35 is the new 25.
But more muscle.
Ooh, and more maturity,
Yeah.
and more savvy.
Well, the question of will John return or won't he? Look at Stephanie Gilmore is the other big story that came out the same day as John, and she took last year off, said she'd be back this year, and she just put out an announcement saying she's not coming back this year either. She's taking another year off. So I think it's grueling to travel on the world tour. And like I said, there's so much downtime.
Yeah.
So even if, and then if there's not downtime, let's say you show up at an event and it runs in the first 3 or 4 days. You just traveled halfway around the world for a 3 or 4 day surf trip. You know what I mean? Like that's also grueling. And so the idea of doing it on your own terms, especially if you're not, if your sponsor contract and your income isn't related to the tour, it really feels like you're in retirement mode to a certain degree in the
I
peak of
mean,
your life.
what's really fascinating is how does Florence Marine X, what do their sales numbers look like in this off year, quote unquote off year? Let's not call it an off year. Like if things dive, or their marketing department, like their sales department, they're like, dude, get back on tour because
Well, I don't think so. It interestingly, Jamie O'Brien and Mason Ho have a podcast now,
yeah,
the Jamie and Mason show.
yes,
And they asked John that question before he made this announcement. They said, uh, "Do you think it's smarter to build the brand with world titles on tour or out adventuring?" And John said, "Out adventuring is the answer." He goes, "That's much more in line with the brand's ethos and identity. That is what the clothing and the brand is about. Yeah, I'm wearing the board shorts in heats, but really, like you aren't, the
no,
consumer isn't. The
yeah.
consumer's buying them to go live in the real world. And so if I'm on a boat and I'm sailing around finding great waves, that's what I should be doing to promote the
So you're
brand."
suggesting perhaps that although he said he will compete again next year, the the fun and the adventure and the excitement and the lifestyle of being off tour is going to be so great, and it's going to be so good for the brand that there's no need anymore. You've got 3 world titles, and he's going to acquiesce and follow the Steph Gilmore plan paradigm and just kind of go, nope, I think this is it. You know,
I
I mean,
think
if he does one more year, is it like the retirement year? Is it like this is it? Let's do one more year and celebrate my life as a competitor and get the accolades at each stop, and it gives the WSL a storyline for the whole year, and I'll be carried up the beach at each event regardless of how I do, and like, I mean, is that the idea?
I think his wording was precise. He said, "I intend to return." And so that's not saying I'll be back in 2026. He says, "I intend to," meaning that's something I would like to do, but I have a year of things that are going to happen that will influence my decision making at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And so I do think it'll happen in the way that you said, which is it will be so enjoyable. He won't know, the year will go by and he'll be like, "Dang, it's already over. I wish I could do that again." And there's two other major factors that are going to play here: time with family. So you get all your time with your family, you don't have to go clock in. Number two is the WSL and how they run their business. And so if they make it, they are running in a wave pool this year. Let's see what happens with judging and whatever else. And it's like, it's just not a super efficiently run business to support John in his efforts to surf the best waves and improve his surfing. And built into that is something I discussed with Chloe Andino as it relates to the judging. And that's once you create a judging criteria and you have to surf to the judge's criteria, you box in the surfing and you don't create room for innovation. So if you do something that is outside of the norm, it could be a kick flip, it could be, some crazy rotation we've never seen before. The judges traditionally underscore it. They don't know how to score it, because it's never been seen before. What if somebody did a barrel roll at pipe? Where does that land on the judging, on the scores? It historically, like I said, it does not score. They give it a 4. And so that means you have to surf, you have to surf how people have surfed in the past, which is regressive. And so John being able to go out there and just do whatever he wants to do, I think will free up a lot of his surfing and his mental state. And he'll realize a
Yeah.
new way of life,
Yeah.
but just like Stephanie Gilmore has.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, right? There's so many things you bring up so many great points. Um,
Well, let me ask you this then. We were talking about Florence, John's brand. Stephanie Gilmore has a 7-year contract with Rip Curl.
yeah.
Do you think they care that she is on tour or not?
I think they care that she stay in the limelight. However, the
Yes.
best way to do that is,
Yes.
and I think is Neil Ridgway still involved over there? Whoever the marketing guy is over there, definitely they had this discussion like, look, we support you 100%. Let's figure out a way to make sure that you're actually more relevant than ever. You won't be relevant if you lose out to friggin' Erin Brooks every heat. You know, like you will be relevant if you go lifestyle on us. And in fact, I've already seen that she's kind of gone more lifestyle and more slightly more, how do I say this? I've sensed a slightly more like feminine sort of motif to her marketing
Totally.
than in the past, where it was like, I'm 7-time world champion. I'm I'm Princess Diana. It's more like Princess Diana when she went off with Princess Fayad or whoever.
Prince.
What? Prince.
Prince, not
What was
princess.
his name? Was it Fayad or I don't remember anyway.
Yeah, I don't remember his name either.
Anyway,
Well, yeah,
we'll
I
see.
agree. I agree with you. Just staying in the limelight is kind of the key at this point. And to be honest, I don't know that she has necessarily. She's been a little bit aloof.
Well, I mean, the limelight, I was thinking about this. The limelight's hard to stay in these
Yeah,
days. There are
yeah,
so many channels and distribution points of surf content. You and I have blabbed on this forever, but it's not easy, is my point. Like, it's not as easy as, oh, I'll just put out content. You kind of have to
yeah,
put out some creative content. You have to, it's just like it's like you got to throw out some clickbait. I mean, for lack of a better phrase, you got to throw out something that gets us to go, oh, I mean, how many times have you seen surf content come your way, David? And you're like, that one
right.
didn't really capture me,
Yeah. Well, um, interestingly, when John made this announcement, I didn't hear one voice of disappointment. I heard a cacophony of sweet, take the year off. When Gabriel made his announcement about being injured, I was bummed. It's like, oh man, Gabe's not going to be on tour. I'm bummed because we're not going to be able to see Gabe do what Gabe does. John, the things that we love that John does, we're going to get to see more of. And so him not being on the WSL, it's not a bad thing for anybody. That's I
What's a
think
trip
that's
about
an
that?
indictment.
What's a
What?
trip about that is it got me thinking about AI and your algorithm specifically. Like, are they just feeding you? And by the way, this happens.
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
they just feeding you positive commentary that aligns with the way that you already think because they know how you think because they've had, web crawlers, spiders that go through both of everyone's content and go, oh, he really likes to hear this. Let's feed him more of this.
100%. Yeah, they are, but there's also in the opposite happening. Enragement is engagement, and that's 100% trackable and true. So they do both.
Yeah.
Feed you into your kind of echo chamber
Yeah.
because you continue to, but the other detail here as it relates to these storylines, actually before I get to the replacements and who will be on tour, let me just state as a reminder, Gabe's no longer the WSL's marquee athletes gone. Gabe's not there. John's not there. Steph's not there. Carissa's not there for a second year. Kelly Slater is gone, but he's coming back to compete as a wild card at Pipe. So I think they have a issue on their hand. Scott's raising his hand closer and closer. He's dying to talk.
I agree with you. However, I would suggest to you that the WSL's marquee athletes, you mentioned two of them, John, and Gabe. You did not mention Katie Simmers and you did not mention Erin Brooks, who I think are right there with those other two, John, and Gabe. I don't
First,
think Carissa Moore is a marquee athlete anymore. She's gone. And I don't think Steph is a marquee athlete. I don't think she's a marquee name. I don't think when you see Steph's name from a competitive standpoint, you're like, when I see her name, I'm like, I think of Kelly. I'm like, yeah, he was great. Was being the key word.
well, uh, Erin Brooks is still a question mark. I mean, the difference with Gabe and John, they've earned world titles. They're proven. Caity has one world title, so she's proven. Erin's still a question mark. So I think Caitlyn is a draw and she's a marquee athlete. But the point is they
Dude, Erin
lost.
Brooks is a total draw. You she's
She's a draw. I'll give you
especially
that.
if the WSL like pushes it.
So the WSL has opportunities to create new marquee athletes.
Yes.
But there's only a couple of them. It's also a lot of work, and there's a lot that remains unknown when you're trying to develop a new talent and shine a limelight and get people interested in them. As opposed to Kelly shows up, we all watch the Heat. That's my point. For the WSL, when they have these built-in figures,
I think that when Aaron Brooks shows up, we watch that Heat.
there's a lot fewer people who know who Erin Brooks is. You're right. You and I watch that Heat, but Kelly Slater spikes
Well, I'm
numbers
not
no matter
saying
what.
that Aaron's on Kelly's level. What I'm
You
saying is,
did.
as
I
far
said
as
marquee
marquee,
athletes, and you said this one's up there.
she is.
No,
She
she's not.
she she won every single heat of her first pro event and smoked the entire field. She won pipe.
There's no way she spikes the numbers the way that those other former world champs do.
Okay, I think you're right there. You got
I
me
mean,
there.
but you're right. For you and I, for the core community, we're engaged, but her profile just isn't as big as those people are who have had a decade to build it.
Right.
But I'm totally engaged, and that leads us to replacements. By the way, Luana Silva in for Steph, Al Cleland in for John, Gentile in for Gabe, Eli Hanneman in for Crosby. Crosby shattered his elbow at backdoor
Yeah.
about a week ago. Nadia Aristabe in for Joan Defay, and then Moana and Kelly are going to be competing at pipe in the wild card positions.
Let's take a break and then we'll discuss those names.
You got it.
We'll be right back.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Welcome
back. Discussing those replacement surfers on the WSL. On the female side, on the women's side, none of those names excite me. None of those names move my personal needle.
No.
They're just okay. Let's see what happens. Yeah. So on the men's side, obviously, Alan Cleland Jr. moves the needle a huge amount, and the other names you mentioned, Ian Gentile, they're all great surfers. By the way, all the female surfers are great surfers. The women surfers, I'm only moved by one name.
Yeah.
And that's Alan Cleland Jr.
I've got a little interest in Eli Hanneman because he's such a phenomenal free surfer, and I feel like he didn't really get going when he competed on the CT last. So I think he could actually do some big damage, but question mark there. Whereas Al Cleland, I'm definitely tuning in. Now, what about John dropping the mic as a world champ is kind of an iconic move. Like he's the top of his game. He's making a decision. He knows what kind of his interests are, and he exits gracefully. Seeing Kelly's name pop up again here, it's like I do want to see Kelly compete in these big events like Pipe, but I don't want to see him compete in the other ones. And I also feel like, dude, take a break. Like, take the foot off the gas. You don't have to do this anymore, like just enjoy some time off. What are your thoughts on Kelly competing?
For the first time ever in my life, when I saw his name in the draw, I was kind of like, really?
That's how I felt too.
And I'm almost hesitant to even say it. I feel like I'm being disloyal to one of, if not my favorite professional surfer.
Well,
and by the way, I picked him for survival.
Oh, you did?
Survival. Kelly's and it was also when I picked, usually for pipe, if you pick Kelly, you're like, nope, it's a no brainer. I got to admit, I'm thinking to myself, has he been surfing a lot? Like I saw him at Surf Expo. He's been flying around. He's got a kid. Like I haven't seen him in the water. Maybe he has been, probably he has been sneaking out at sunset. I don't know. But for the first time ever, I'm like, is he tuned up or has he been eating like Trader Joe bread pudding with pretzels in it?
I don't think he's doing that. And first of all, send me that product. I have not seen that there.
You got to go to Trader Joe's and get the pretzel bread pudding with caramel and pretzels. It's insane. And it's so good that it turned me into like, I'm starting my whole 2025 workout regime. I'm back on the program. I got to stop eating. I'm going full health.
Is it in the frozen section?
It is.
Okay. I never go to that section, so that's why.
If you see them, buy all 20 packages at once and hoard them.
Got it. So Kelly's not gone that far off the rails, but I agree with you. Let's go look into the future. A crystal ball here. There is a point where it becomes undignified. There is a point where if he's 60 years old showing up at Narrabeen, you know, uh trying to accumulate points to get back on the CS, so hoping to qualify for the CT.
Yeah.
Where we go, come on, buddy. Like it's
Yeah.
enough. It's enough.
Yeah.
Like you've kind of your reputation was solid and now it just feels a little undignified. So the
Yeah.
question to you is, what is the turning point for that? Like where do we, you know,
Well, the answer to that is we may see that turning point in a couple of weeks. Like if he doesn't perform at Pipe, we know that okay, because I don't think well we all know he doesn't really have an interest in going to Snapper or going to Margaret's, you know,
yeah, right.
and competing. I don't
I
know,
think
you know,
there's a,
like
I think there's a certain like ego down there and competitiveness down there that does still want to do that.
if he
Or
fails,
the
yeah, go
moment
ahead.
he doesn't, then he's sitting on watching it on the internet and he's like, I could smoke that guy. I'm booking a plane ticket.
I think if he fails us at, and I say us, if he fails us at, you
His
know,
loyal fans.
8 foot pipe, then that moment in Narrabeen where we're like, come on, dude. Like
So I think there's
there's no
no version of undignified at pipe. I think if he can always compete at pipe up until Michael Ho's age. And he probably will. And so I'm giving him a pass at pipe. But if he shows up at the wave pool in Abu Dhabi, if he shows up at in Europe or whatever else, even Australia, I'm starting to put the indignity thing in. What?
he's got to show up at Abu Dhabi. Like I'm going to give him a pass at
No.
Abu Dhabi. It's his wave pool. By the way, I talked to a guy yesterday who surfed there and said it's insane. Like
Well,
3 times we were talking about you and I. We had this experience together at Kelly's wave pool in Lemoore. It's like going to Disneyland when you're 6 years old. The first time you go into the Magic Kingdom, and there's Huck Finn's adventure, and there's It's a Small World After All, and there's Mickey Mouse, and oh my God, Goofy just handed me some peanut butter pretzel, whatever. It's insane. It's a bucket list thing, and Abu Dhabi apparently is like that on steroids. It's like going to Orlando instead of going to Anaheim. Go ahead.
yeah, I've seen that. The way that they've built that place out looks really incredible. But I would argue he'll go to Abu Dhabi to make an appearance, maybe get on the mic, but he should not compete in Abu Dhabi. Even when he was competing in Lemoore, when he had more time in that pool times 10 than anybody, he finished eighth in that event or something like that. He's not on the same level as these fast twitch guys.
I agree,
So
but you have to give him a pass because the people that run the pool, the marketing department, everyone being on the mic isn't enough. People want to see Kelly on the wave.
they
And
don't want to see Kelly
it's just a
lose on the
marketing and a
wave.
branding move. Even if
Well,
he doesn't do well, it's not going to be messaged that way. It's going to be like, here's Kelly at his wave pool. Look how wonderful. And he's going to be ripping. And granted, yeah, he's not going to be doing the stuff that the other high flying Felipes are going to be doing. But from a marketing and messaging and branding perspective, it has to be done.
I have the volume down anyways, so none of their messaging lands in these ears. These virgin ears.
Good point.
There's a certain point where Duke shows up at the beach wearing a suit and he just like celebrates with everybody, and then the surfers go out and compete. You know what I mean? Like Kelly, put the suit on.
That's a good way to put it. That's a
Yeah.
really good way to put it. Yeah.
Well, surfing or survival league, you mentioned that you got Kelly. I had John John. I already locked in my pick with John John.
I looked for John John. I was like, holy shit, he's gone.
Yeah.
That's when I found out.
Yeah. So I need to go in there and fix my pick. Anyways, survival league, anybody who wants to play, you only have a few more days to lock in your vote or lock in your entry for the season. That's the thing. It's not, you can't jump in
Yeah, you got to
mid-season.
go now. Like
You have to
green
go now.
light. Like this should be there should be a horn sound like a nuclear invasion.
Pause the podcast. Open survival league dash or survival-league.com and $25 for the entire season. That buys you into the men and the women's league. The women's league is new this year, but you get both leagues for $25. You just pick one surfer per event. The surfer on the men's side has to make it past the round of 32. On the women's side, what round would that be?
I think 16.
Okay. Perfect. So make it past the round of 32 or the round of 16. If you don't, or if you advance past that round, you advance to the next event. Doesn't matter if you win the event or not. You just have to make it past that round. You get entry into the next event. If you don't, you don't. And you're out of the league for the entire season. The other detail here, you can't pick the same surfer twice. You can't just ride Felipe Toledo all the way to the bank. You only get him once. Do you want him in a wave pool? Do you want him in Brazil? Do you want him in El Salvador? Pick your poison. Simple,
And
fun,
it's your, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
simple, fun. 7K for first prize on the men's side of the tour, plus 3 Panda surfboards. And then the women's winner will get 1K plus 1 Panda surfboard. But look, if you run both leagues, you're walking with 8K and 4 surfboards.
And I was going to say, you get to compete against Scott and David. But after you mention those prizes, nobody cares about competing against Scott and David. Do it to win those prizes. That's incredible.
If you're going to do it against us, join, or when they put like the name of referral or team name or whatever, put spit.
Yeah, it'll say who referred you and put spit in there and compete against Scott and David, compete against us. The women's side. So I'm already questioning my men's pick, and I picked Vahini Fierro, which is kind of a semi dark horse pick when you think about who else is out there. Like, I don't know how much Vahini Fierro surfs pipe. I know she's incredible and solid left hand tubes, but then I'm thinking like Betty Lou Sakura Johnson seemed like a much more solid pick, somebody who's a local out there that competes on the tour regularly. So I'm kind of going, I'm kind of questioning my pick, not because Vahini isn't a great surfer, but because if you, am I saving Betty Lou Sakura Johnson for some other spot? No, she should be the pipe pick.
But you should say Vahini for Tahiti.
Right. So now I'm going to go in right now and change my pick.
And don't take advice from me because I've steered you wrong before. I've steered all of our fans wrong before.
Yeah,
But I did pick Betty Lou. I think Betty Lou's on a tear. When I see her free surf clips, I'm like, that's world champ potential.
You know what I saw? I saw her talking somewhere. I don't know where. It might have been the Tahui back. It was somewhere she was talking, and it was basically like, "This is my backyard. This is where I surf all the time. I know all the boys." Like it was like, okay, this is somebody you're gonna have to deal with. You know what I mean?
She's incredible. She's at the top of her game right now, and I think she's still ascending. So make that pick. I've got to get to preschool drop off pretty quickly here, but I have a couple more things. Do you have anything important you want to get out?
Well, I just have a must-see moment and some other stuff that can wait.
Okay, what's your must-see moment then?
My must-see moment is Caitlyn's new debut film. It's called Your Own Drum, as in beat your own drum, directed by Nicholas Chalmers and James Sarandis. And David, it stars our friend Devin Howard. More importantly, perhaps Victor Bernardo, who's absolutely ripping. Saxon Wilson, young East Coast surfer. Zach Flores from here, my hometown in Encinitas. Grayson Messier and Ian Gotron. So this is one of those really cool films where they're riding different boards, different craft. It's something that I can certainly relate to. And these guys are ripping to an assortment of different music. So check it out via Catin's YouTube channel. You can watch Your Own Drum. My must-see moment presented by Trees Wax.
Trees Wax, petroleum-free surf wax, by the way. How incredible is that? Caitlyn is somebody we don't talk about often enough. Caitlyn's legacy history is unrivaled almost. I mean, you got Birdwell up there in terms of what they're doing in terms of board shorts, but Caitlyn also producing films like this and stuff. They're incredible.
Yeah, it's something that if it hasn't, it needs to be developed more. The history of Nancy Caton, what she did for pro surfing in the mid 70s. I want to say it was like the only pro event on the West Coast for a number of years was the Caton Pro-Am at Huntington Beach.
Yeah, they're an incredible brand. And I was glad to see this. Nick sent me this film. I have not actually watched it. I've only seen the clips on Instagram. I haven't had the time to actually sit and watch, but I do. It's been on my priority list for a while, so I'll definitely get into it. And I love all those surfers that you're talking about, and the clips that come out that they put out on social look incredible. So I am in, Scott. I will take your must see moment recommendation. And interestingly, yours is Katin, mine is Caitlyn. Caitlyn Simmers has a new film out called Blouse. Have you watched?
No, but what a great title.
I know. I thought the same thing.
It's a really good title.
Okay, this is why I watched this and I fell in love deeper than I had felt before, and also wanted to I cement my claim as her being my favorite over Erin Brooks this season. Like Caitlyn is one of my favorite surfers right now. The title's hilarious, or good. The art direction throughout the film is incredible. The song selection, incredible. Every single clip, I was captivated by. Her style of surfing, this may be, dare I say it, the first female surf short film that I was inspired to go surf like. Like, I want to surf like that. I've felt that way about Stephanie Gilmore, certainly at times, but she's never put out like an edit, like a film, like a Stephanie Gilmore film that she made. And so all of her stuff is kind of through the filter of somebody else's interpretation. And I love her surfing. But this was like, man, Caitlyn, what is this song? Like, I'm going to go put it on my playlist. All of it in the way that Dane Reynolds was doing Marine Layer production, where the entire thing is infused with Dane Reynolds. That was Caitlyn Simmers. And I've questioned over the years, like, why don't we see pro female shortboarders directing their energy towards surf edits? Because it's so hard to make it on the tour. Why not? I mean, we see longboard female surfers doing that and building that kind of influencer style. But why don't we see pro shortboarders doing that on the women's side in the way that we do see the men doing it? And the reality is Caitlyn's doing it. Caitlyn's doing it simultaneously while she's winning world titles. I am inspired by her artistry.
Yeah, there's so much there really. Real quick, I know you got it going. I'm putting out my own short film. It's probably going to take Caitlyn's film off of your list of something that's going to motivate you to surf the way that that person surfs. It's called Grumpy Stumble, and it's just a bunch of clips of me stumbling over my booties and my frozen feet and sort of falling.
That's exactly why I used to watch America's Funniest Videos. So you may have a fan right here. Well,
But
Caitlyn's was
I mean,
named.
how often? Why am I thinking of Caitlyn as a veteran because of Erin Brooks? Like this Caitlyn Erin Brooks uh, contrast, or no? There's some tension there that maybe
Yeah.
I'm trying to build it up, but I sense it's there. Erin's so nice. Caitlyn's frankly very nice too. I want to create a rivalry there, and it'll be interesting to see if it actually manifests.
Well, you mentioned a contrast. There's a distinct contrast. Erin Brooks is like mechanical and really polished, and she's got like there's no kink in her surfing. Caitlyn is
Is it a
in
Gabe
imp
John situation? Is
no
Erin
Kate
Gabe? Is Caitlyn John?
Caitlyn is no Caitlin's improv jazz. Like, you don't know where the next beat's coming. John is still polished, you know what I mean? And so is Gabriel, but Caitlyn is like
Miles
freestyle.
Davis?
Yeah, you don't know what's coming next.
I love it.
And that's why I'm switching all my wardrobe, Scott.
Oh wow, you got blouses. I thought you had blouses. Simmers 76. What does it say? No, hold it still. I didn't see it. Read it to me.
Simmers 76. O
Oh,
side for the win. I'm
that's
wearing
cool.
Caitlyn Simmers merch, dude.
That's sweet. Look at you.
Um,
I thought
yeah,
you would put on a
and
blouse of some sort.
well, look, if her edit is called blouse, yours should be called cashmere.
Fair enough.
Cashmere cardigan.
Yes.
So anyways, Blouse, Katie Simmers, it's free. It's on YouTube. Go see that. And then also one final note, Waterways Travels sending us to El Salvador and Chicama. He's supposed to send me the final, not the final, but the updated numbers of whether or not those things are sold out. I know Chicama definitely has some spots left, but spots are sold. And then El Salvador might have a couple left. We're taking over the resorts. So you want to pick places in the world where bringing 20 people is not going to bum everybody out. And the good news is Punta Mango is kind of isolated on its own spot. And so we could take, whether there's going to be 20 people in the resort either way, but it's 20 of our people. So it's going to be all of us, and great surf right there. We did it in 2024. And then Chicama is just so vast a playing field that it's always empty. No matter what, you can always find spots to yourself. So
Yeah.
the El Salvador trip is April 1st through the 7th. If you want to join us on that, email me surfsplendor@gmail.com. And then Chicama is August 27th through September 3rd. That's a 7-day trip. And same email if you want to come to that. I'll give you all the pricing and the numbers and all that sort of stuff. Surfsplendor@gmail.com, and also waterwaystravel.com, making all of it happen. I'm just forwarding your email to them, but they've done all of the organization, and they do a phenomenal job. And I know they've sent Scott to Fiji this year. They've sent all of our listeners elsewhere. So they're killing it.
We love Waterways Travel, and please consider joining us. We always have a great time. Great
So
crowd.
much fun. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, David, we've said a lot. Until next time, adios and aloha.